It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to talk about Calcom. Now, cal.com used to be called Calenso. If you've ever used Calendly for somebody, or you've even had it set up for yourself, then you'll know pretty much what this does. It's a booking system. It's a system that lets you say, here's the times and days that I have availability, and then other people can go in and choose from those times and days where they would like to meet with you. And once they set that, it marks that time off as unavailable automatically for you and sets up your calendar so that you know when you have those times available, when you have meetings, when you have things you need to be in. It's a really great way to let your customers figure out what fits best based on your availability. Instead of sending an email and saying, hey, could you give me 2 or 3 days where you have some free time and I'll try to figure out if I've got some time and if I can move things around. Instead, you just send them a link and let them look at your cal.com site, and basically they can pick the times that fit for you. Now, I want to say that Calcom is open source. You can run it yourself, and that's what we're going to do today, but they do have a hosted option if you'd rather just use their services. If you're an individual, you can use their services with certain features for free, hosted by them. You don't have to set up anything. So you can go check that out if you're a business and you want to pay because you're like, I'd rather not host it myself. I don't want to deal with the servers. Again, you can go do that. You can go check them out, see what they have to offer. You're supporting the open source side if you do that, so that's always awesome. But we're going to go through getting this set up in Docker and Docker Compose. They've got their instructions here. Now, the Docker version of cal.com is community-led. It is not something that cal.com themselves put together, so they want to make sure that you're clear that if you have problems, you come to this GitHub page to post any issues and get answers and help. And from what I've seen, they're very responsive, which is pretty awesome. We're going to go through this setup here in just a little bit, and I'll explain some of the things that you need in order to get things running, and we'll get through it. We're going to get into it right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up. And that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. We're going to use the instructions here on the Calcom Docker Compose site. Again, this is kept up by the community members. This is not cal.com themselves doing this, and they state that on their homepage as well. The instructions are pretty straightforward. I've tried this in the past where it had to run through a build. It looks like they've created an image now that doesn't require that, which is great because that makes it a lot easier and makes it much more easy to be successful with it, which is also great. So I'm going to open up my terminal emulator here, and I'm going to just log into the server that I want to use. Now you can do this on the Linux machine in front of you or Mac or whatever. This is going to run in Docker. You do need Docker and Docker Compose installed. And again, I'll have written instructions with step-by-steps over on my show notes. That'll be linked down in the description, so if you're interested in following along and doing this that way, it's much easier sometimes to do that than trying to pause the screen and type what I have. But I have enlarged the font a little bit for those on mobile devices if you do need to be able to see that a little bit better. The first thing I like to do is I like to have a Docker folder, a parent Docker folder. So I already have that, so if I do an ls, you're going to see here I've got this Docker folder already created. But if you don't, you can do that with mkdir docker. That'll make the directory called Docker. And then what we want to do is we want to move into that directory because we're actually just going to clone this GitHub repository. So we're going to go back to their instructions, and it'll give you the command that you need to do for that. So we'll just grab this command right here, which is git clone. Now you need to have git installed as well. If you don't have git installed, it's pretty easy to install from your repositories. So we'll talk about how to do that as well. So if you need git, you can say git, or you can say on Ubuntu and Debian sudo apt install git. Okay, this is what you would do for that one. If you're on Fedora, sudo dnf install git. If you're on OpenSUSE, you can do sudo zipper install git. So Arch, you should know how to install git already, but it may already be there anyways. But if you don't have it, make sure you've got it installed. The next thing we're going to do is just paste in that git clone command. It's going to go out and it's going to say, hey, pull down all this stuff for the cal.com Docker stuff that I need. So it does that. Pretty easy. Now this creates another Docker folder. So if we do an ls, you'll see there's just a folder right here called Docker. So that's what it pulled down. So we want to rename that. So we're going to, so in Linux, to rename in the terminal, you actually use the move command. So we're going to say mv, and then we're going to say /docker, and we're going to move that to something called cal-com-docker. So now if we do an ls, we've got this folder called cal-com-docker. We're going to cd into that, so cd cal-com-docker. And if we do an ls, you're going to see here that we've got this docker compose.yaml file. This one's going to be important. And then there's also a few hidden files. So if we do ls-a, you can see here that there's also this .env.example file, and we're going to need that too. So we're just going to go ahead and do a nano on this .env, or actually we're going to copy that example file first. cp.env.example to .env. So we just want to change, we just want to copy this. We don't want to get rid of it, we want to move it, we want to copy it. So if we have to, we can go back to the original that they had. So we're just going to make a copy called .env. And we're going to edit that .env file, and I use nano. Now you can use Vi, Vim, Emacs, whatever makes you happy, but I use nano. When we open that up, you'll see there's a lot of text in here, but a lot of it has this little pound sign or hashtag or number sign, whatever you want to call this, out in front of it. And this is a comment. This means that it ignores whatever's got a this sign in front of it, and it's just a comment. First thing we have to do is understand that this tells us, hey, if you want to use the open source version of this, that's fine, but you have to keep it open source. You cannot just take this and start selling it and using it and keeping, and doing things with it that you're not supposed to do. You have to also leave it open source. So if you make any changes or anything like that, you have to keep it open source, which is the whole idea. So we're gonna just go here. We're gonna type in true in all lowercase letters. If you want to buy a professional level license or their enterprise license, you can do that, and then you would put in your license key right here. In this case, we don't have it, so it's fine. We're just going to leave it blank. We're going to move down to this section that talks about the next public app URL. So before you start this process, you probably want to know, especially if you're going to have other people from outside of your network or your administrative area trying to create calendar blocks to spend time with you in any way, shape, or form, you'll probably want to have a public domain name. So I own the domain fixitdelrio.com. I also own the domain routemehome.org. So I'll use routemehome today. This is what I use for most of my testing. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to change this to be what I want that to actually be. So you see here it says next public web app URL. So we're just going to go here. I'm going to take out the port. I'm going to take out all of that, and then I'm going to go back here. I'm going to put an S on it because I want it to be secured. And this tells the application, how do I move you around through the application? So if you don't change this and you set up mygreatdomain.com, and that's supposed to point to the Calcom instance you're running, the first time you go to it, it'll load up the login page, but when it logs in, it's going to try to route you to that localhost :3000. And somebody outside your network, that's not going to work because it's going to try to go to their computer instead of your server. So you need to change this and set it to what you want it to be on a consistent basis. So I'm going to set this to be cal.routemehome.org. This is, again, I own the domain routemehome.org. At my registrar, I have an A record that points routemehome.org back to my public IP address so that I can set up these subdomains like this and they know where to go. You need to have that type of thing set up as well. And if you're not sure how to do that, I have a video out there. I'll link it in the show notes in the description so that you can figure out how to set this up as well. The next one is the next auth URL. If you're not going to use your own authorization provider, which we're not in this case, we're just going to use the login from Calcom software. But if you're going to use your own, you would need to go and uncomment this and change it and all that stuff. So it's kind of up to you. Now, we need to keep going down here a little bit, so I'm going to scroll this up. This next part here is the secret. And it says this needs to be a base 6432 kind of key. So I'm going to run this command in the terminal here. This one right here. I'm just going to copy that with Control-Shift-C. I'm going to open up a new panel here, and we'll split it horizontally, and I'll make that text a little bit bigger, and we'll paste in that command. It's going to run and it's going to give me this right here, which is great. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it up here. So I'm going to copy with Control-Shift-C. I'm going to go up here, I'm going to get rid of secret. That should not be what you leave. And Control-Shift-V to get that nice little secret key in there. Don't worry about that, you can see this key. This is just a test system. I'm going to destroy this after the video's done. It'll be gone before you even see this video come out. So don't sweat it. Next, you have an encryption cipher that they also want you to set up. Now, this could be any mix of upper, lower case characters, things like that. But they give you some information out here to the right. So if we go back right here, they tell you here's how you can create this, and they give you a little bit of terminal information here just to help you out with it. So it's kind of long, but it starts with this DD right here, and we're just going to say DDIF, and that's the input file, and then it makes it 1,000 bits, and count equals 1, and it creates an MD5 sum. So we're just going to do a Control-Shift-C to copy that. And again, we'll Control-Shift-V down here, make sure we got everything. And when we run it, it's going to give us this key right down here. So that looks good. Let's go paste that in for our key. And that's used to encrypt your CalDAV credentials. So another really important thing, okay? The JWT secret is no longer used, so we don't use that. It's already commented out. We don't need it. So right here you've got this Postgres user, and it says unicorn user. You can change this to whatever you want it to be. It's just setting up an environment variable. So you could change this to be unicorn calcom, something like that. This password, you 100% want to change this password. You do not want to leave it what it's set at. So let's just change this to something long and strong. So you can do that as a long string of characters and numbers with uppercase, lowercase characters, and something like 32, or more characters is pretty strong. Or you could do a string of unrelated words with hyphens in between them, kind of however you want to do it. Let's just do the first one. So we'll just make a bunch of characters and numbers. So we'll do something like that. That's pretty long. That should be a pretty strong password. We're going to keep moving down. We're going to leave this as Calenso for the DB, and we'll leave it on port 5432 with database set up. They set up this string right here for us. We don't want to change this one, so just leave it alone. Your Google API credentials. If you use the Google API and you've got some reason to put in those things, go ahead. I don't, so I didn't. We're going to keep going down. So you've got this Calcom telemetry disabled. So we're going to put a 1 in there, because if we don't want to send telemetry data to Calcom, then we'll put a 1. If you do want to send telemetry data, you can put a 0 and it'll send it to them. It's kind of up to you. So you've got some Microsoft information here for using Outlook.com. So if you use Outlook.com with Office 365 and you have that calendar and you want that integration, you need to go get these bits of information and basically set up your API keys. That's what it's asking for. It wants your ID and it wants your secret. You set that up for each application, so it's not like you're giving them something real specific, but it allows this application to write things onto your calendar. So as people block out time, it'll put it on your Office 365 calendar, and you'll realize, oh yeah, okay, I've got to have stuff. And it can also look at your calendar and pull in other appointments that you have so that it doesn't, set that as an available time for you. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. You want to set these things up. If you use Zoom for working, for having meetings with people, and you also again have API information, you can set those here. I don't, so again, I'm not going to set those. And then finally, we've got our email and SMTP settings. So your email from, so you would set something here. So let's just set this as from, and we'll just say Brian at fixitdelrio.com. And then we've got our SMTP settings here. So our SMTP server, you should put in whatever your SMTP server is. If it's Gmail, it's smtp.gmail.com. You need to go set up a application password if you want to do this. And if you have two-factor authentication turned on for Gmail, it's probably going to be a pain, but do what you want. I run my own server, so it makes it a little bit easier. So I'll put in box.fixitdelrio.com, and it does run on port 587, which is TLS or start TLS. My email user, so my sending user is going to be Brian at fixitdelrio.com. And then we've got that password for that user, so I'll put that in a minute without recording it. And then down here you've got this environment, which is production. So we're going to leave that alone. So I'm going to fill in this password, I'll save everything, and then we'll go do the stuff we need to do in the Docker Compose file. Alright, I've saved my changes to my env file and I've exited that guy, and down here I'm just going to type in clear that out and exit out of that pane. So now we've got a little bit better, and we'll clear out the terminal here just to make it easier for you guys to see what's going on. Next thing we want to do is look at this docker compose.yaml file. So we're going to say nano docker compose.yaml, and we're going to look at what's in here. So it's a version 3.8. They set up a volume called database data. We don't actually need to set it that way, so we're just going to remove that part. This network they create is called stack. You could change this to anything you want, and again, you can change it here for the name. I'd say just leave it unless you already have one called that for some reason. So the container name is database. Is going to pull down the Postgres data image, and it's going to set up some stuff here. Now the volume, we can do // so that the data is stored in this same folder if we want to, which is pretty useful. env file, we're going to kind of move down. Let's see, yeah, .env, we want to use that. We're going to get down here to the calcom section, and we can see here that it's going to use the image calcom.docker, and it's going to run some stuff to pull this down. This build right here, if you comment this line out, like so, if you put a hashtag #, number sign, whatever you want to call it, then it would use this build and it would try to build it from the Docker file. So it's up to you, but I would say it's easier to use the image file. I've not had a lot of luck doing the build a lot of times. Here, they're just pulling in the values that we just filled out in the .env file. So we don't need to change anything right here. As we move down, the network is stack, restart always, networks, again, stack. So we're going to move down, and now there's this port number. This is an important one, so let me move this up a little bit so it's easier to see. So this port number right here on the left side, this is the port that the host is going to be using. This is where you're going to connect to this service. On the right side, this is inside the container, and this is how the application expects to run and where it expects to run. So don't ever change the right side of the colon. It's very important that you only can change the left side of this colon. If you need to change the mapping, you can. But it basically says, on my host, I'm going to connect on this port. And when I do, I want you to send me to the container on this port. So the container expects it to be running on this port. It doesn't really care about this one on the left side. So I'm going to change this because 3000 is a very, very common port for node applications. So we want to change this to make it a little bit less common. So I'm going to change this to something like 8594. It doesn't matter what you pick as long as it's one that's not in use and one that's not reserved for other applications or services. So usually anything above 8000 is pretty much safe. There may be a few that are reserved, but not many. So 8594 is fine. Our env file is all good. We're going to leave that database URL just like it is. Now if you have a separate database that you want to use, you can set that up. But you need to put in the correct database URL for that database, wherever it is, so the application can find it and connect to it. So it depends on the database, great. And then we've got a little bit more information down here, and it goes and grabs some image information again. And it says optional use of Prisma Studio. I don't need this. I want to run this just for me. This is not for me to be doing any kind of other stuff. So I'm going to use Control K to delete each one of these lines down below here, all the way to this one that says end right there. We're going to get rid of some extra lines there, and now we're going to save with Control O, press enter, and then exit with Control X. Our system should be set up and ready for us to start running. So the first thing we're going to do is just pull this down because it's a lot of stuff to pull down. So we're just going to say docker compose pull. It's going to go out and start pulling down these images. So you can see this last one here that it's pulling down, it's a pretty big image file, or a pretty big piece of the image overall. So be patient because it's got to pull it down, and then it's got to extract it, and then everything will kind of get ready and finished. Alright, now that all of those things have completed, we'll clear that out one more time, and we should be ready to start this up. So we're going to do Docker. One thing we need to do though, so you remember I set up that URL, so I'm going to go to my Nginx proxy manager here real quick, and I'm going to blow this up for you guys a little bit. And we're going to create a new proxy host, and we're going to call that cal.routemehome.org is the title that we gave it. I'm going to hit tab so it turns into a little chip like this. And then I'm going to type in the IP address of my server. And then that port number, 8954. I'm going to say block common exploits, WebSocket support. I'm going to do that just to get that URL there. Now, that's not HTTPS yet. We may have to do a little bit of finagling to get that to work, but we'll get there. So we're going to go back to our terminal here. And we're going to do docker compose up-d. Got the wrong version. Docker -compose up-d. If you have a newer version of Docker Compose, which hopefully you do, you don't need the hyphen there. Okay, things should be starting up, so we can do a docker compose ps just to see if it's running, and you can see it's been running for about 7 seconds, and it should be forwarding 8594 to 3000, which is what we want, so that's good. We can do that one more time, make sure everything's still up. Yes, so 20 seconds in and it's still up. That's usually a good sign. Now, be patient because it does take time for the application to get up and running. Could take a minute or two, so just be patient while it does that. If you want to see what's happening, you can do docker -compose or docker space compose logs-f, and you'll see all the log output as it goes, as it's getting things set up. And you'll see right here it says ready in 1905 milliseconds, and it says it's running on localhost 3000. That's inside the container. You got to remember we set up an actual URL for this. So we can do Control-C to get out of those logs. And now if we go to our system here, we can find our cal entry, and we'll just click on it. Let's just see. It's going to give us a bad gateway. It's not up and running yet, and it's not HTTPS, which may be what it's looking for. I put in my port wrong, see? So I need to fix this. This is supposed to be 8594. Let's switch this back to HTTP for a second. Let's save it. Let's click it. All right, it went. That's perfect. Now we want to get HTTPS, so before we do any setup, let's go back one more time. We're going to click on this. We're going to click on Edit. We're going to go to SSL. We're going to say Request a new certificate. Force SSL, HTTP2, HSTS, and accept the terms of service. Make sure our email's filled in. We're going to click on Save. This could take just a few seconds, but it should give us an SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt. If this just goes away, internal error. Let's try again. I had to clean this up before just to make it work, but let's see. Alright, whenever that window just goes away, it means we should have a actual SSL certificate, so we can just click again. And we see that it opens up with HTTPS, and we've got our CA certificate. Now we're ready to start the actual setup of our CalCom application. You can see here that it's got the actual URL, which is great. I'm going to give it a username of Brian. And as we go through, I'm just going to fill out my information here. And you can see it kind of checks things as you go, so I'll just put in a password here that's nice and long and strong. And they want 15 characters. So once you do that, make sure you get a good strong password, and then we're just going to hit next step. I don't need it to remember, and I don't need that to remember for now. So they want to know, are you using the AGPL v3 open source license, or are you going to use their CalCom, their custom plan? So we're going to use the open source license for now. So let's click on that thing and hit next. And I'm going to scroll just a little bit out so you can see everything. So it says enable your apps. So you've got a lot of different things going on here. There's really nothing to select right now. It's just kind of showing you like, hey, here's things that you're going to probably want to get set up. But if you look, there's a little, it's already on. It's just really hard to see. Let me turn off Dark Reader for just a minute. There we go. So you can see which things you want on and off. So I'm just going to turn off this one. I don't need it. And this one, I don't need it. CalDAV I'm going to leave on because that's what I'm using. So for any of these you're not going to use, just turn them off. Not Notion, certainly not going to use Microsoft stuff. Now you might use Microsoft stuff, it may make sense for your business, that's okay. Again, there's a lot of these things here. Maybe you use Google Calendar, you would want to leave that one on if you do. Maybe you're going to use this ICS feed. There's a whole lot of them here. So yeah, CalDAV is the one that I want. It's in beta, but it seems to work okay. And we'll go down and just get rid of each one of these things. So you've got all these different calendars you can set. I just want this one that says CalDAV. So that's the one we're going to use. I'm just going to move forward. It's going to come to say, hey, welcome to CalCom. It's going to check, here's my username, here's my name, here's my time zone. Make sure you've got the right time zone set, because of course when people are setting calendar events, you want that. And we're going to click on next step. It's going to say connect your calendar. So this is an important step right here. You want to make sure that you're able to connect this calendar without too many issues. So I'm just going to click on connect. It's going to open up a little form for us here. Oh, there we go. And I want to put in my CalDAV information. So I'm going to go grab that, get it put in here, and then we'll move to the next step. So in Nextcloud, you just click on your calendar. I'm just going to click on it to copy it. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to paste. And then I'm going to put in my username. And I've got to go grab my actual password here. Put in my password, and I'm just going to click on save. It doesn't like something. Invalid key length. Okay, let's go back real quick to our terminal. So one thing I remember is that the key that I had 33 characters. Let's just see if that's an issue. So let's do nano.env. So I believe this one's correct. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 44 characters. Encryption key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. That's one too many characters. I'm just going to remove this 9 from the end. I'm going to save. I'm going to exit. And I'm going to do docker compose down. And I'm just going to do docker compose up -d again. There we go. Let that run. It's going to take a second again to get started up, so be patient. If you ever see this 502 bad gateway and you've already had a system that you know was up and running whenever you restart a Docker container, a lot of times it just means wait. Just give it a little bit more time to get started. You can hit the refresh, and you'll see now it's going to load up for us. There we go. So we're going back to this kind of initial setup. That's fine. And we see all these different ones, so it kind of got rid of the settings that we had set, but we just want CalDAV beta. We're going to click on connect. Just be patient while it loads that up. And again, we will paste in our password, our user, and we'll hit next. There we go. So it was one character too many on the key. Be patient while that runs. It's just going to get things set up and connected. And it says connect your calendar, so we're going on to the next step here. It's trying to pull in information from my calendars on Nextcloud. So in this case, I do have a personal calendar, a video recording time frame calendar, and a family calendar. So I'm going to set this up to be on my family calendar. I'll turn that one off. And the reason I do this is so that as people are blocking off time, my family can see where my times are blocked out as well, and they'll know when I may not be available to have conversations so they don't come knocking on the door of my office, things like that. So create events on the same one. I'm going to say family calendar, and we're going to move to continue. And then it says if you've got apps that you want to connect to this thing, go ahead and pick them. So I'm a Jitsi user, so I'm going to click on connect. And that one's done, so it's installed. If you have other ones you want to use out of this list of apps, feel free to click on connect for as many as you want. I'm just going to move to the next step now. And then here you're going to set up what times and days you might want to use this software. Or make yourself available for other people. Now, let's say I didn't want to be available on Mondays at lunchtime. I can just click on add, and I can change this to 12 p.m. And then this I can change to 1 p.m. So now I've got this kind of broken apart time, and I can change this to be 5 p.m. and I can change this to be 8 a.m. So now I've got 8 to 12 and 1 to 5 that people can actually block out. So you can keep clicking to go through and kind of add these things on your setup. You can also turn on Saturday, Sunday if you want to, but once you've got your days and times set up, just click on next. Finally, you can add a profile photo, you can add a little bit of information, and click on finish. Now it comes up and gives you this warning like, hey, your password either isn't long enough or you don't have 2FA set up, and I don't have 2FA set up, so that's why we're seeing that warning. So you'd want to go through and set up your two-factor authentication. If you go here, you can go to My Settings, and then down here you've got this option for two-factor authentication, and once you get here you can click on the little toggle, and that'll get you set up to set up your two-factor authentication. And then you've got a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to go through here in this next part, where we'll go through the user interface and just talk about some of the things you have options for. Once you've got Calcom set up, your best bet's going to be to click through the site, obviously, and see what's there and try to set some things up. But you can see here that you've got 15-minute blocks. You can enable this or disable this over here on the right. You've also got 30-minute blocks. And then you've also got secret meetings. I don't know really what this is, but I imagine it just means like it doesn't show up on your calendar. It's kind of up to you to use that or not. Right now it's disabled, which I'd leave it disabled, I imagine. When you've got an event type, you can click on New up here. So let's just create one called a 1-hour meeting. And we'll just call it a 1-hour interview. And then we can set this, of course, for 60 minutes. Click on Create. And again, we can set these different options that they've given us. So here's the URL that it's actually going to use. So it's going to be using the cal.routemehome.org site. And then it's going to have me, Brian, so that it knows it's me, because you can have more users add themselves to your site. And then you've got this 1-hour interview. If you don't want to set it for 60 minutes exactly, and you know that your booking person might need to set a different time, maybe less, maybe more, you can tick this box here that will let them change that time, and it would basically disable this time here. And then location you can also set, so you can pick, is this going to be a Cal video or a Jitsi video? And you can just kind of pick, like, how do we want to do this? In person, all kinds of different ways to do this. So we're just going to say it's going to be a Jitsi meeting, which is great. And it even says if you can't find the right video app, just click on this link and you can add that video app to your system. As we go down, we'll see availability. So now if we go back, it should have all the things we just set. It does, so it keeps those things as we go. But you can see up here there's a little save button to save our changes once we're done. If we go to the availability, this is where it's going to let us say, like, when are you going to allow people to pick these times? So you can set this availability to make it different. So you could do a buffer event, you could do an after event if you want to. You can set up the time that it needs, so minimum notice 2 hours. In other words, people can't book you for like the next hour. They have to go at least 2 hours ahead of time so that you have time to prepare. You can set this longer if you need it. And then time slot intervals use the event length. You might want to set something with a little bit of time in between, just because it gives you a chance to get up, stretch your legs, refresh yourself, look into the information for the next meeting you're going to, take any notes for the meeting you just finished, use the restroom, all the things that are important in between meetings, so really useful to have that setting as well. You can limit the booking frequency. You can limit booking only the first slot. You can limit a lot of different things about it just to keep things from being kind of done all the time or by the same person over and over. It's up to you kind of how you set that. You've got some advanced settings. So the event name in your calendar, what is that going to be? So 1-hour interview between Brian and the scheduler. So it's just going to automatically kind of set who's going to have this, and it's going to put this in my family calendar. So it kind of already knows that. And then it says layout. Here's the layout that you're going to see for how you want to have this set. So you've got your month, your weekly, and your column layout. So you can kind of see what that's going to look like. Booking questions. What do you want to get from the person who's trying to book time with you? Okay, name. Makes sense. Email. Makes sense because you need to be able to contact them. Some short text, like give me a subject line, give me a pretty good description or some itinerary of what we're going to be talking about. if there's other emails that we need. And then if they're rescheduling, let them tell you why they're rescheduling things. Does it require confirmation? So this says the booking needs to be manually confirmed before it is pushed to the integrations, which is like, hey, somebody tried to book it. It should send them an email and they need to confirm, like, yeah, I booked this. So you could turn that on to make sure that they're actually going to do it. And it says always when booked with less than 30 minutes notice. So we're not even allowing that because it says 2 hours notice. So we could just say always. Requires the booker email verification. Yes. So if you're worried about somebody else looking at your calendar who managed your calendar and seeing the notes of your meetings, then you could say hide the notes from the calendar. That way that person's not seeing them. You can redirect them to a custom URL after they finish their booking if you want to. So you could take them to your homepage for your website or something else. It's up to you if you turn that on. So you could also generate a private URL to share without exposing your Calcom username. So you saw where it said, Calcom/Brian whatever. Here is the user URL, so they would realize, oh, that's the username for this person. If you're worried about somebody trying to hack your account, you could turn on the kind of custom URL, the private URL. So offer seats for booking, which means this automatically disables guest and opt-in bookings. And then lock time zone on the booking page, you can do that as well. So as we continue down, we get recurring. Do you want to allow somebody to set up a meeting as recurring? It says experimental, so just understand that this is still being worked on. Apps, are there any apps that need to be a part of this meeting? So again, you kind of get that same list of apps that you might be using for other things, but maybe you have different apps you want to use. So does it need to be PayPal, or does there need to be some kind of QR code or Stripe or anything else? If you're doing a meeting where you're saying, I'm doing a consult and you're going to be paying me for my time, then you may want to have Stripe or PayPal involved so that person can pay you and you can say, okay, great, we can now have our discussion. You might need Google Analytics or other things that are going on. It's up to you if you add any of those. So workflows is an enterprise feature, so you'd want to have enterprise for that one. And then webhooks. So you can create a webhook, which is pretty useful sometimes. So you can create your first webhook for the different event types. So a webhook could be used to send something out like a notification to your Rocket Chat server or Mattermost server or Matrix channels, things like that. Kind of up to you if you want to set that up or not, but a little beyond the scope of this particular session. So we're just going to say save. And it says 1 hour interview type was saved, and there it is. There's our 1 hour interview, and we've got it saved, ready for people. We can go to bookings to see if there's any bookings, and there aren't any bookings right now. So we can also go to availability to see when it shows that we're available. So teams, so Calcom is better with teams. So add your team members to your email or to your event types. Use collective scheduling to include everyone, or find the most suitable person with round robin scheduling. So pretty cool. Pretty nice to set this up and kind of use it. Again, we've got the different apps that you can set up here. So maybe you've got conferencing apps, calendar apps, automation apps. There's other apps, and then you've got analytics apps, and maybe even more stuff. If you kind of scooch to the right here, you've got more things you can see. So we can view our public page. So you can see here's what my public page looks like, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So let me copy this URL, and I'm going to go over here, and let's just open up a private window, and I'll paste that in, and let's schedule a 30-minute meeting. And you can see here's it's going to load up my availability. So if I say, you know what, I want to do this on Tuesday, see, so I switch to Tuesday and it shows me the times that are available, and I say, yeah, 11 a.m. would be great. It's going to ask me for my name, so I can say I'm Bill Johnson, and I can put bill@fixitdelrio.com. Let's just say that. And additional notes. Looking forward to our discussion of open source awesomeness. And then we can add guests if we want more people. And before I do that, I'm going to go set up the email for Bill real quick so we can actually see that we get that email. So just give me 1 minute while I do that. All right, so I've set up the email for Bill at my site, and I'm going to go ahead and hit go. It says this meeting is scheduled. There we go. We've got all the details. So that's really great. And if we go here, we should get an email from Bill here in a minute, but we can go back and actually look at the other site. So if I go here and I say look at my bookings, I should see that one for Bill. So now I've got this one that says, hey, you're booked to go see Bill on this day at this time. I can cancel it. I can go in and edit the meeting. I can reschedule it. I can request a reschedule to make it easier for Bill to try to find a different time because maybe I didn't realize I was booked or I didn't change my calendar like I should have. And I can even edit the location if I want to. So if I edit the location, I can say, let's do a Jitsi video. And I can update that. So here inside of Bill's email, you can see he's gotten this invitation, 30-minute meeting between you and Brian, and it says, here we go, your event has been scheduled. So it shows him that he's got a scheduled event, and right here says, hey, update, your event has been changed to the location, and it shows him that we've got this Jitsi meet, and we would meet at this Jitsi address right here, which is pretty awesome. So it sets us up to be successful. It's sending out the emails the way that we want, and it's letting us know, like, hey, you've got everything set up the way that you need to have it, so you're doing well, things are moving forward the way that we want. So that is CalComm in a nutshell. I know that was a lot to go through. I know that it's a ton for you guys to kind of absorb, but hopefully you see this, you see the benefits of having a system like this and something set up in this way. I think it's really useful. I think you'll really enjoy it. I know that it looks like a really great tool for me, so I'm going to go set up a production version for myself soon, and I think it's going to be really great. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time. It's your open source advocate, and I'm back, and I've set up a store with a little bit of merchandise. I love being your open source advocate, but I want you guys to be the open source advocates with me. So if you want to, get out there and get some of this stuff. And if you do, let me know what you think of it. Thank you for subscribing.